I'd like to take the chance to welcome Bill. Hello, Bill. Do you... Yeah, we have a near full house tonight, so if you would like to go ahead and introduce us to yourself shortly before we go into the questions.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand what you said. What did you say? Should I introduce myself?
Yes, please, go ahead.
Well, in this context, I introduce myself as a very fortunate person who decided to do a film for the Lutheran Church. But the Lutheran Church thought they would get a script. And I said, no, I don't write scripts. And of course, Bob Lee, a very wonderful gentleman and a pleasure to work with him, he's the one that made this film possible, incidentally, more than me. Well, maybe not more than me, but equal to me. And anyhow, so he said, I said, we don't write scripts. We let the story evolve as it evolves. And I said, that's taking risks, but that's what I do. That's what I've always done for 20 years, 30 years. Now it became 6 years. And so we started filming. We started filming Bill Youngdahl, and of course he wanted to bring changes to that church. He wanted to bring changes to make it more authentically Christian. That was his goal. It wasn't to make it more Bill Youngdahl-ish, but more Christian. Looking at what Christ did, and how he lived in the world, and what he gave himself for, and to people. And so it seemed like, okay, well, go ahead, Bill. And it wasn't that long before people began to grumble and say, this church is changing. And of course, then the council meeting, which if you saw the film, you saw the real break when the council meeting got together and all those council members who thought they were just going to have one more meeting where they all praised themselves for serving Jesus. And well, it didn't work out that way because Bill Youngdahl and Ray Christensen and two other members of the church said, you know, well, Ray put it best. Where has the church been when the things have been happening in this world the way they've been happening? And I think that was the compelling question. And as incidentally, I think it's as compelling today as it was then, is what is the church doing? If we are Christians, if we believe in Jesus Christ, what is it that we are expected to do? Well, it certainly isn't just sit on your hands and let the tyrants rule. It certainly is not to be silent in the presence of deceit, dishonesty, or despair. And that's more what it was in Augustana. It wasn't so much dishonesty, and they were trying to understand what was true, but they were despairing of what they found or what they were told was being true, because that was not what they wanted to hear. They wanted to hear that what the church was doing in Omaha was what the church should be doing. Be nice guys, be nice to one another. Don't let black people come in, because after all, this is a white church, and white churches don't need to have black people, or at least that was their view. And that was a tragic view. It's a tragic view when any group says, we don't want them. If Christ taught us anything, it was, as we used to sing in Sunday school, red and yellow, black and white, they are precious in his sight. Jesus loves the little children of the world. And he loves the big people too. So that's how it all started.
Can I ask you Bill a question? Bill, this is Mark. I know a little of the story. I got it. 1, 2.
No, I see you.
Yeah, there you go. There we go. So I know that when the Lutheran Church came to you and said we wanted to do a film about the Lutheran Church's reaction to the race issue, right? That was the way they put it to you?
Yes. And I thought that's a good call. And I thought that was a very generous, open way of open-ending opportunity for me, because that's the way I make films. I always make films that derive from a question that matters to a lot of people. And the question here was, what's the role of the church?
Now the challenge for you is, I know part of the tenet is that you let the story unfold, but you only had 2 weeks, right, to get this thing shot?
No, I don't know how much time. I only had maybe 2 or 3 weeks of total time, but I went back, I think I went back 3 times.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
The first time, was it, you know that?
Yeah.
See, people know much more about me and my film than I do. So what did you think?
All right, so I think the question I had was, you were involved in picking Augustana, right? And picking Pastor
Yes.
Youngdahl. Tell about why you chose Augustana and Youngdahl.
I chose Youngdahl because I knew that his father was a very liberal Chief Justice in Minnesota, and that he was going to bring his liberal views to a very conservative, because I checked out what is Youngdahl, what's his history and what's their history. Check on people's history, and you can almost always understand what's going to happen in their present when they, for the first time, meet up with one another authentically. And that's what they did. They met a Bill Youngdahl that they hadn't prepared for, but they met an authentic Bill Youngdahl. And Bill Youngdahl met an authentic Augustana Lutheran Church. These were not bad people. These were not people who hated, although as one minister said, as you remember, I want them to have everything I have, I just can't stand being with them. I see.
That's right. Now, you were, I know some of these things, that's why I'm bringing it up. You got, whose idea was it to do this exchange between families of Augustana and several of, like Hope Lutheran?
Well, it was Bill Youngdahl's idea after I made dropped some hints. And I thought, I try not to over-direct, but I also try to invite a change which I think is right and appropriate. And so I invited Bill Youngdahl to have it was the layman, not the minister, it was the layman who said, look, we're in the community with African Americans, and we should at least go to one of their churches. Well, of course, as one kid said, I'm not going alone. No, you didn't have to go alone, sweetie, so don't worry. But then I wanted to get young people in here, and not just the Augustana young people, because I knew I wasn't going to get much from them. They were just sort of following their daddies and mommies as they're supposed to do. So I found this church, and it just happened to be across the street from a barber shop. And it just happened in the barber shop that there was this extraordinary human being who had gone to Creighton Law School. So he was not your ordinary barber, and this was not your ordinary setting. But I was really proud of those young people at the I forget the name of the church across the street from the barber shop. They really, say what, do you know the name of it?
Well, yeah, Calvin. But Jonas Orduna, who was one of those girls who was talking, became a Lutheran pastor herself, as a matter of fact, and eventually a member of Augustana. So.
Oh, is that right? That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Well, I just thought, to me, those kids were the hope of America. They weren't trying to peddle any position. They were trying to understand what was wrong, who could do what, and who did not want to do it, and why didn't they do it? So it was and I thought, a very thoughtful, intelligent assessment of the situation and where they might fit in or where their parents might fit in. And there was no radical, we've got to change them, or, it was just thoughtful, concerned, young, youthful Christians. Boy, I tell you, if you could manufacture people, I'd manufacture a lot of them.
Were you surprised by and maybe some people don't know, what a big deal this movie was when I guess it premiered on PBS for most people, is that right?
Well, not for most people. First, for the Augustana Lutheran Church and the neighbors in Omaha, it premiered in the local theater.
Yeah, at the Joslin, at the Witherspoon, yeah.
Yeah, that was where it premiered first. I felt that those people had a right to see the film before I showed it to anybody else. I always do that. With Bill Youngdahl, I said, Bill, I'm going to show you the sequence of you in this film. I don't know whether you're going to like it or not, because about 1/20th of what you actually said is in the film. The rest is on the cutting room floor. And I wanted him to see it because I did not want to expose a film in which Bill Youngdahl appears to have nothing to say. In fact, he had a great deal to say. In fact, he had very wise and sensitive and caring things to say. But I felt that was not the point. The point was that ultimately, white people at that time, and fortunately, I think at this time, had nothing to say to a man who, in his own very quiet, not very arrogant and tyrannical way, is saying, kids, you're bad, you're wrong, and you got to change.
I understand that he actually said quite a bit back to Ernie Chambers, but that you decided to leave that out so people would hear what Ernie had to say during that sequence. Do you recall that?
That's what I said. Yeah, I cut 90% of what Bill said got cut out.
And they went on to tour together across the United States together, Youngdahl and Chambers, and led discussion groups around the country after this, actually, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, it was funny when Governor NET, National Education, no, it wasn't NET, it was AT&T.
Yeah, that's right.
The American
Before
Telephone
PBS,
and Telegraph,
yeah.
major company. They called me up and they said, we would like to have Mr. Chambers visit our group. I thought, are you sure? But yes, they were sure. And I said, okay, Ernie, they want you to visit. What are the conditions? He said, well, for one thing, I don't wear a shirt and a tie. I will not do that for anybody. And I will say what I believe. I will not be unkind, I don't think, but I will be totally truthful. And he was and did. And I wish I could go back and talk to some of those executives and see what they did upon reflection of what Ernie said, because he does not appear to be a rageful man. He does appear to be somewhat angry, yes, but he's not rageful. He doesn't set out to harm you. He does set out to get you straight.
That's right. The nation reacted quite a bit when it got a national showing. Why do you think that people reacted so strongly to this film?
You know what? Most of television is nonsense. A lot of it is silliness. Much of it is lies. So when you see a television program and you realize, you know what? These are real people saying real things that really matter to them. Doesn't happen that often. So I think that's what it was. And that people connected, they connected to Bill Youngdahl, but they also connected to the struggle of some of their church members who really knew that they should be living differently if they were following Jesus, but they couldn't do it.
Well, I remember the first time I saw this film was not the original screening, but CBS with Charles Kuralt did an hour documentary and discussion about Time for Burning because it was such a big deal at the time, which I believe you were on that program too, right?
So NBC calls me up, or CBS calls me up, and they said, that's a great film, Bill, it's really, really fabulous. I said, well, were you going to air it? I said, no, but we'd like to have a group discussion after it. I said, no, I don't want group discussions. I want you to air the program the way it was done, because it was done with concern and consideration for the people in it, not necessarily approving, but consideration and concern. When the bishop, what was his name? I've forgotten his name already. The bishop was told we were going to do the film, going to show the film, and he said to Bill, well, some of those things that were said to you, I don't think we want those to be heard. I said, we don't want any lies to be heard. We want all of the truth to be heard. So if you look at it, before I air it, you look at it, and if there's anything in this film that you believe is a lie or a distortion even of the truth, you let me know, we'll change it. There wasn't anything in it, and we didn't change it.
And I think part of the impact, and I think I've heard you say this is part of what you were thinking, is that a lot of the narrative about the civil rights movement was as a Southern phenomena. And you were trying to tell a story about the fact that bigotry, prejudice exists in every part of the United States.
Oh, yes. In fact, that was my goal. When people said to me, look, we're going to do a film about the church and racial tension, what southern city are you going to? I said, I'm not going to any southern city because there'll be assumptions. Oh, that's the South. No, it's not the South. It's not even just America, incidentally, folks. It's worldwide. But so no, I said, no, we're not going to. I'll find a northern city, and I'll try to find something where there is predictable tension. And that's why I went with Bill Youngdahl. I know that the son of a liberal judge from Minnesota is not going to be a mealy-mouthed. He may be gentle and quiet and reserved, which he was, but he's going to tell the truth that he did.
You want to go to questions?
Yeah, just maybe like one last question to both Bill and Mark is about the lasting impacts of the film, both like in film history and social history.
Yeah, well, you know, you and that gang that got into direct cinema, cinema verité, are the great-grandfathers now of reality television. So you think about, did you feel like you were part of a movement and a change in film history, or were you just out making the best movie you could make?
And I never think of myself as a part of any larger thing. I'm just a guy who's trying to do the best he can with the talent God has given him, that's all. And no, I've never thought of myself as part of a movement. I did realize that I was the second person in America to have an 8-ton camera, a handheld camera that meant I could run around. Because it's funny, when I went to NBC, the cameraman, I couldn't shoot because I was in the union, so the cameraman says to me when we go out on the first day of shooting, he says, where do you want me to put the tripod? I said, put it in the trunk. He said, ha, 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 ha. I said, no, put it in the trunk. We're not going to use tripods. You use a tripod, then people have to accommodate you. That's not their job. Our job is to accommodate them. When they move, we should move. And he loved it. He loved it. Joe Badallo was his name. He was a little short guy, about 5'8", and he loved just slapping that camera around. Nobody had ever let it do it before. It was like a toy with a...
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, and that technology always makes a big difference. Imagine if you had cell phones to shoot now.
Yeah. So I would love to hear from some of the people in that audience whether they think the film needs to be updated, or is it good, will it work now, and should it be seen, and if it's so, who should show it, or, I mean, those people sitting here, some of them do talk, don't they?
Oh yeah, so this is the time for Q&A. We have plenty of time. I will just ask you to wave your hand to Jasmine, who's going to be wrangling our mics tonight, and we'll go from there.
So my question more goes to Mark, other than Bill. Sorry about that. But in the movie, they said, "Where was the church when the Nazis were in Germany?" And the answer is that when people of different churches said the Nazis are bad, they rounded them up, threw them in concentration camps, or they killed them. And was the church just unaware of that, or were they just trying to sort of? Because that's sort of what happened, like in the movie, that they forced him to resign because just those few people said, "I don't want you here anymore."
Yeah, that's, you know, it's always that fear of losing your congregation. And I'll just add here that everything that everybody was afraid of in that movie happened to Augustana. When that premiere happened at the Witherspoon Auditorium, it was devastating to the congregation. As Ray Christensen said, they thought they were going to come and cover our excellent potluck suppers. Yeah. And when they saw their church portrayed in that manner and knew that it was going to be shown to the nation, it was devastating. And about half the congregation, a little less than half of the congregation left at that point. And so it was the end of that Augustana as the big Lutheran church with over 1,000 members, and people moved out to the suburbs at that point, and it changed forever. Now I happen to think what Augustana that was left was really cool, but that's, you know, that's What they loved about that church was gone. So they weren't being paranoid or weird.
Somebody got their hand up back there.
What?
Yeah, I was just wondering, I haven't been an Omaha resident for a long time. Was this before I-75 was built, and was this also before the so-called riots in Omaha?
Yeah. A little both, I think. There were some riots earlier, I think.
Hi, I don't think the film needs to be updated at all. I think it could be shown anywhere and should be shown a lot. I'm a member of a local Methodist church, and if you aren't aware, the Methodists are wrestling with similar decisions about who to accept into the church and who can lead a church. And as I'm watching this unfold from 1967, I'm seeing our own church, who has a small group of power people, try to take control, and the church has split. But those of us who are left believe we are doing and following Christ's message to love everyone and to accept everyone. Thank you.
I think we just have to remember that Jesus didn't end up on the cross because he was a nice guy. They didn't put nice guys on the cross. They put people who were rabble-roused, people who were upset the equilibrium of the status quo. And that's what Jesus did. Jesus threw those bloody guys out of the temple because he didn't like them. Whispering is going on.
Well, we got somebody here who knew Ray Christensen, and he wants to talk a little bit about what happened with Ray. You want to know what happened with Ray? Ray Christensen was the young man who was initially at that first meeting and voiced the objections, and then kind of had that journey of conversion. At that point, you almost lost Ray as a character in the story, didn't you? Didn't he want to pull out?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. After the first meeting with the counselors of the church, he thought this was not a good idea. It's best you shut your mouth and go back. You have a nice wife, you have a nice kid, and you have grandparents. Just enjoy your life. But he couldn't do that. He just felt he could not shut up. And so he kept going.
Yeah.
And
he came over to your hotel, didn't he?
He wasn't. Say what?
Didn't he come over to your hotel after that meeting and wanted to
Yes.
leave?
Oh, sure. He wanted to make sure I heard what he had to say. And he didn't want anybody around to influence me or him. So, no, he was very...
Well, Ray...
he knew I think he knew in his heart of hearts.
Yeah.
The church... what happened to Ray? He continued to make documentaries.
Yeah, he was a filmmaker himself, as a matter of fact. And I think that gave him a certain awareness of what the process was and the opportunity it presented at that point. So, and he went on to quite a successful... He moved to Minnesota and had quite a successful career up there, as a matter of fact. So... I think that's a great story, actually. Oops.
Trying to figure out if
When,
Bill. All right, there he is. There he is. You froze for a second for us, Bill.
we got,
I think we got disconnected. It went
yeah, we
dark
lost you for a second.
and
It's on
quiet.
Zoom.
So I can keep talking, but nobody's probably hearing me. Oh, somebody hearing me?
Yeah,
No.
you're here. We're hearing you now. But we can hear you now.
We're having a technical problem. Well,
Can you hear us? Oops. Oh.
Let's try to figure that out. While we do that, Mark is here to answer your questions.
One character that...
back.
You're back, Bill.
Yes, I'm back.
We have a question over there, I believe.
Hi, Bill. I have a question about you as a filmmaker. So when you made this movie, direct cinema and cinema verite were both pretty new concepts. Who were your documentary influences and how did you learn to be a documentary filmmaker?
Somebody needs to state that again, because I didn't understand.
What were
Go ahead.
she was admiring that you were so cutting edge in 1966 with this film. What were your influences that got you into this style of direct cinema, as it's sometimes called?
Well, I saw films made where the people spoke for themselves, mainly in France and in Europe. But I said, why not? Why not make a film where the only comments are made by people who are making them because you believe in them, not because they have a script or should have a script or might have had a script. So I like the idea of an unscripted film, and so I made a little one about a guy in the South who went to Chicago to try and get work because he could barely get a living in West Virginia where he was working. And he came back because he just couldn't stay away from West Virginia. And he was working in a coal mine where you had to crawl in. You couldn't ride in, you had to crawl in to cut the coal. It was a terrible, terrible job. But he wanted to live in West Virginia. So it was a very simple story of a minister trying to help a man to change his life, who really preferred to do what he was doing within the limitations of the job. And he was a very lovely minister. And that's the other thing, that I like working with people. Ultimately, my heroes are people who believe that the world can be altered, if not radically changed, at least altered, at least made a little better. And so that's basically what I do, as I do films about people trying to make the world a little better. And almost inevitably, there's something about them, if it isn't just the idea that pervades a community and makes a difference. It may not be a big win-win-win, but it can be less lost. Are we back?
Yeah, we're just passing the microphone.
Hi. I was a member of Calvin Presbyterian Church when this was made. Here I am down here. You can't see. The camera isn't faced that way. Anyhow, I thought this.
You're on now.
I found this a very powerful movie when it first came out, and I think it's powerful now. And I just think it ought to be shown frequently and often to a wide variety of audiences.
Well, this print that we saw, by the way, Bill, it was very pretty print. Although it was still, you shot it, was it Tri-X that you shot that on? It was still pretty grainy.
Yeah, it was.
Okay, yes, but it's all very clean. It's really pretty. You're gonna love it. So this is a brand new print, 4K scan of the original 16 millimeter. You shot this at 16, correct?
Right.
Yeah. So it's a 4K scan of the original negative, and it looks beautiful. And that's part of the Lutheran Church's effort now to redistribute this and get it out there and regenerate some awareness of it, because these issues are coming up, as I said, it is timely and never ending that these issues don't come up and reemerge. Augustana is now a reconciling in Christ Church, and we've come into a lot of issues of pushback on that over time. I know, are you First Methodist?
What did the man who just finished speaking say? I didn't hear what he said.
He was a member of Calvin when this film came out. Calvin Presbyterian,
yes. An African-American church.
Yes. He's not African-American, but he was very moved by the whole thing himself. So that's what, yeah, you remember that impact, yeah. How old were you then, do you remember?
I was 66. I was born in 39.
Yeah, okay.
Whatever that is.
How old were you?
Whatever that is. 27.
27 was how old he was.
My youngest child was adopted that year, and my second child was adopted in 1969.
There we go. Yeah. Greg, you got something?
So I was wondering, what other churches were you looking at filming if you didn't get Augustana? And how many hours of film were filmed at Augustana?
You catch that, Bill? The question is, if Young Dahl had said
Yeah, I
no,
did. If Young Dahl had said what?
said Young Dahl or Augustana had said no to the filming, did you have a backup plan of where you would go?
No, because I have total self-confidence. No, I didn't have this backup plan.
Well-
I just felt that I was not trying to expose evil.
Yeah.
I was trying to reveal the struggle of the good. And they got that. They got that. I was not trying to embarrass them. I was trying to help people understand their point of view, even though I personally didn't agree with it. But I never set out to make people look bad. People volunteer to look bad. Sometimes I'm very grateful for that. But I never set out to make people look bad. I really try and set out to make people understandable. And I think that was the difference. And that's why the film became so popular, is that they realized that the filmmaker wasn't out to condemn anybody. He was out to help us understand one another. And understanding one another means understanding the not so nice folks. Now, I have a hard time with Donald Trump. I will admit that. But other than a few crazies like him, I work very hard to understand people who I don't necessarily agree with. I have a men's group. And the men's group is that we can say anything we want, but we cannot blame anybody else for anything. Because any problem we have is a function of our own perception, our own decisions about our perception. So it's a group of men who we meet every week. That's another thing. I really believe in discipline. I really do. My wife will say, yeah, I haven't noticed that lately, but actually I do. And then one of the disciplines is to listen to others, to understand, not to. I've been with groups of people where anybody who says anything is at risk of being attacked, because that's what the audience. I was working with a professor from Princeton University, and he was showing the film that we had made together, and his fellow professors told. I said to him after, I said, Ted, what's with those people? What did you do something before we came here that made them hate you? And he said, no, that's what they do. They think their job is to prove that they are right about something, and whatever it is, the film, the lecture, whatever is wrong about something. And I said, oh, I see. It's a nice venue you live in. I'm glad I don't work there.
Well, you got anybody in the back up here?
Yes.
Okay.
At what point in the process did you find out that Young Dahl was in fact going to resign, and how did that make you feel? And does anyone know what's become of him since then?
Do you hear that, Bill? The question was, when did you find out in the filmmaking that Young Dahl was going to be forced to resign?
Oh, I knew it. I knew it. I would say I knew it day one, but I knew it the afternoon of day one. In fact, I said, Bill, I want to come here and do a film about you and the church. I think this is a big church, has strong characteristics. But I said, do you mind if at the end of this film you're going to look like this? And I put myself up on a proverbial cross. And he giggled. I said, Bill, trust me, I've been here before.
Now,
and sure enough, he was, and he realized that but mainly it wasn't him. His wife, just the tension was too much for her. And so he decided he would leave. He would have stayed. He would have stayed and fought the good fight. because he was that kind of a quiet and very dedicated, committed human being. He would have fought a good fight. I don't really would have won, but he would have fought a good fight. But his wife was just being so distressed. You remember Ray's wife that's another thing people say, how'd you get that sequence where Ray's wife breaks down and cries over what's going on in the church? Well, what we do is, Barbara and I, she did the sound, I did the camera. Wherever we went, we took our equipment. We didn't hold it on our shoulder all the time, but we did take our equipment, put it down by our feet, so that people knew that we were filmmakers. We weren't there just to be casual conversationalists. We were there to make a film. So at any point, we might lift that camera up, which we did, and she would push that microphone. The microphone, in a way, was more invasive than the camera, because the camera you see is sort of back here, but the microphone is right there over your nose. And but she just people. I really think, and I do think I deserved it. I do think people trusted that I was not going to distort anything they said. I was not necessarily going to celebrate it, but I was not going to distort it. And I didn't. And no one ever came and said I did. Ernie Chambers at the screening at the church, Ernie comes over and said, "You made that mayor look like a good guy. He's not a good guy." I let the mayor be who he was, which meant for you, Ernie, he was a schmuck. For other people, he was a hero. For other people, he was, well, just the mayor.
What?
We have time for like one last question. Maybe.
Well, what happened to Young Doll? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, he left and moved out to California. As I said, he and Ernie
moved to
Chambers.
California, took a church in California, then decided to go up to Oregon, took a church in Oregon, and as far as I know, that's where he went on to be his Lord.
Yeah. So he had a long career. I remember that when we tried to get people back together for the 50th anniversary, I called him, he was still alive, and said, "Would you be willing to come back?" And he said, "I am done with Time for Burning. I am not going to talk about it. That's all anybody ever wants to talk about is Time for Burning." So he said, I'm done. So,
Mark, can you ask Bill about his paintings?
yeah, Bill, let's, everybody's admiring your paintings back here. You've now got from documentaries to painting, right?
Yeah, in fact, 2 years ago, I had the best year of my painting life. In 3-4 weekends of two days a week. So it was 8 days or 10 days. I sold 45 paintings, and I thought I'd gone to heaven.
That's right.
And it never happened before, and it's never happened.
We got to wrap up soon, but
Yes.
I wanted to make sure you have a lot of old people here, Bill, and you may not be aware of this, but before Time for Burning, you were already scared of the work of Bill Jersey, because you were art director for what classic film?
The Blob. My favorite film.
All right, very good.
What was fun about it was Steve McQueen. It was his first feature film.
Yeah.
And, his performance in that film is quite good. The film is dopey, but his performance in that film is quite good. And I'm very proud of my sets. That police station set,
Yeah.
you saw the Blob, was a very complex, and I built that whole police station in the studio for $500, the whole freaking thing. Now, admittedly, I probably owe some people some wood that I took without asking. That's probably true.
All right, one last question by the gentleman back there.
Oh, sorry.
What?
The discussion might have moved on, but I wanted to go back to the mayor just for a moment. I got it. You say that you were going to let the mayor hang himself with his words, and he was saying, I'm not going to say that they can't come in here. Do you think he was equivocating? Do you think that he meant to say, I'm not going to be the guy to let them, to keep them out of here, but let other forces that be keep them out?
He's asking about the mayor, and he thought some of what he said was a little ambiguous, but he was a pretty pros.
No, but look at the mayor was the mayor. That's what he does. That's his way of being in the world. He wasn't any more open or any less open. He was the mayor. You know, I don't try and get people to be other than what they are. If the guy is a fake and looks like a fake, then fine. We have a fake in the film. That doesn't hurt. But incidentally, before my microphone gets cut off, it's a little shortly, I want to thank you in the audience for coming to watch an ancient film done by a 94-year-old dude in New Jersey. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bill. This was a pleasure to have you with us today.